Antarctica wasn't always a frozen wasteland. A long time ago, it was full of life, and 56 million years ago, something terrifying stalked its jungles. A giant, flesh-eating bird. It was around 6 feet tall and weighed as much as a lion. For millions of years, nothing could challenge it, so why did it disappear? And could there be even bigger predators still hidden beneath the ice? Paleontologists found 2 massive claw bones in Antarctica, sharp, curved, and powerful, belonging to this bird. They were dug up from the Epresian-aged rocks of Seymour Island, which means they're around 40 to 50 million years old. Their shape left no doubt. These were the so-called terror birds. Their scientific name is Forus raceti, some of the most fearsome predators to ever walk the earth. They were flightless and didn't even need wings. Instead, they could sprint at breakneck speeds, like ostriches from a nightmare. For millions of years, these birds ruled South America. But now, for the first time, their presence has been confirmed in Antarctica. No surprise here. Back then, South America and Antarctica were still connected, allowing animals to easily commute between continents. So these birds probably migrated south to adapt to life on Antarctica's prehistoric landmass. It didn't just survive here, it thrived. But at some point, this nightmare of an animal vanished. Why? Most likely because of the temperature changes. Antarctica was cooling, slowly turning into the frozen wasteland we know today. Its prey may have declined, leaving the predator without enough food. Eventually, it disappeared, leaving no descendants behind. Researchers hope that they'll find a complete skeleton eventually. They're also wondering where there might be even bigger species waiting to be discovered. Perhaps these birds evolved into a completely new Antarctic lineage. But for now, all we have are 2 giant, creepy claws. People often think that there are almost no animals or plants in Antarctica. But that's not true at all. Penguins waddle around, and forget the cute tiny ones. Antarctica used to have 6-foot-tall monsters. The emperor penguins are the largest penguin species alive today. They can dive over 1,800 feet deep and hold their breath for over 20 minutes. There were giant ancient penguins around 38 million years ago. They were the size of humans. Fossils show they had long, sharp beaks, making them terrifying hunters of fish and squid. The fish there are also absolutely fascinating. Forget giant squids. Colossal squids are nightmares even bigger. Some reach over 40 feet long with massive, super sharp beaks and eyes the size of dinner plates. Finally, orcas, the apex predators of the Antarctic Ocean. They hunt in packs, working together like a wolf pack of the sea to take down seals, fish, and even massive whales. There are even tiny plants like moss and algae. Antarctic hairgrass and pearlwort. They somehow survive against all odds. There are many other myths going on about Antarctica. For example, some people think that when icebergs break off from glaciers, they immediately start drifting straight into the open ocean until they melt. But the reality is way more chaotic. First, when an iceberg breaks off from a glacier or ice shelf, it has to deal with underwater obstacles. It can stay stuck on the seafloor for decades without moving. Then, they get caught in powerful whirlpools and spin in place for months. One iceberg, a 23A, spent nearly 40 years frozen in place before finally breaking free, only to get caught in a swirling ocean vortex for another 8 months. After that, their paths are influenced by ocean currents, tides, winds, and even underwater topography. They don't just float freely. Their movements are full of literal, unexpected twists. And speaking of glaciers, another strange rumor is that some humans can't travel more than 311 miles inland in Antarctica because of an impassable ice wall, freezing jet fuel, deadly winds, and no oxygen. But this is completely false. Antarctica has been explored by planes, vehicles, and even scientists on foot. There's an entire research station sitting at the South Pole. People live there all year long. The ice wall is real, a massive ice cliff rising above the ocean. But that isn't some secret barrier, it's an ice shelf. These are thick slabs of ice that form when glaciers slowly flow off the land and spread over the ocean. Almost 3/4 of Antarctica's coastline is made up of them, but they don't form some giant ring around the world. Antarctica is one of the most extreme places on Earth, but we've conquered its challenges and we keep learning more about it every year. That's why every year, millions of dollars are poured into keeping research stations running, protecting wildlife, and making sure the people who live there have everything they need. But where does all this money go? Well, Antarctica stations are basically small cities. There's electricity, heating, water purification, food storage, and medical facilities. The biggest station, McMurdo, is basically a town with over 1,000 people in summer. It has everything from a fire station to a gym. The South Pole Station is super deep inland, so it's one of the hardest places to supply. Getting food and fuel there requires airplanes flying thousands of miles in extreme cold. But the internet loves a good mystery. When Google Maps revealed what looked like a massive doorway in Antarctica, conspiracy theorists went wild. People joked about everything from Bigfoot's vacation home to a secret base, or even a Star Trek spaceship hangar hidden in the ice. But there's a way simpler and less exciting explanation. It's actually a grounded iceberg, a chunk of ice that got stuck in shallow water and is now slowly melting. As ice moves across the landscape, it flows around bumps and obstacles, creating odd shapes. The process of melting, breaking apart, and refreezing can carve ice into unexpected forms. Antarctica also has incredibly strong downward-blowing winds that sculpt ice into dramatic formations over time. No secret doorway, unfortunately. And speaking of doors, for years, Ushuaia, Argentina, has been called the gateway to Antarctica, the last stop before the icy continent, the place where expeditions begin. But there's another option. Punta Arenas, Chile. Let's compare them. Ushuaia is closer to Antarctica. It's the top departure point for tourists going on cruises. But no regular flights to Antarctica. No major scientific bases operating from here. It's basically controlled by the military, which refuses to allow private flights, only commercially operated ships. Yes, Punta Arenas is further from Antarctica, but 22 countries and global organizations use it as their main base. There are regular flights to Antarctica happening there every year. Private airlines can actually operate here, making it the real air connection to Antarctica. Ushuaia may have the best location physically, but Punta Arenas actually runs the show. Argentina made a huge error in picking its Antarctic airbase. Instead of setting up a simple, accessible base at sea level, they built Marambio Base, very high, on rough terrain, completely impossible to reach by land. Everything has to be flown in by helicopter, making operations slow, expensive, and frustrating. For 50 years, Argentina stubbornly stuck to this bad decision, while Chile set up efficient, well-planned bases that the world now uses. If things don't change, Ushuaia will be nothing more than a tourist stop. But what's terrifying is that Antarctica seems to be returning to its past. It's supposed to be the coldest place on Earth, but something shocking happened just recently. For the first time in recorded history, temperatures in Antarctica broke 68 degrees Fahrenheit. This continent is buried under miles of ice. Usually, temperatures there can drop to minus 112 degrees. But in the winter of 2020, scientists recorded an insane 69 degrees on Seymour Island, hotter than many places in Europe at that time. Scientists believe there are several reasons for that. First, there are changes in the way heat moves around the planet's waters. Second, melting permafrost due to the planet warming. It looks like the climate is changing faster than expected.
In 2011, scientists from Chile found a weird-looking fossil in Antarctica that looked like a squashed football. Almost 10 years later, the rock just sat on a shelf in Chile's National Museum of Natural History with no specific label. It went by The Thing in the museum because it looked like something from a science fiction movie. When the scientists finally got their hands on the strange fossil, it turned out it was actually a giant softshell egg from around 66 million years ago. This one is more than 11 inches long and 7 inches wide. A regular chicken egg is just 2.5 inches long, and an ostrich egg is almost 6 inches long for comparison. So, The Thing won the title of the biggest softshell egg ever found and the second largest egg of any animal we know of. The only bigger egg that was ever found was that of the extinct Madagascan elephant bird, which is also 1.5 times as tall as Michael Jordan. The bird, not the egg. The Antarctic egg is also special because it's the first fossil ever found in this part of the world. So, whoever left it there must have been one big creature, probably a giant sea turtle that lived long ago, like a mosasaur. This is surprising because most scientists thought these creatures didn't even lay eggs. So this discovery could change what we know about them. The egg is also unique because it has a thin eggshell and no pores, which is totally different from most dinosaur eggs. It actually looks more like the eggs of lizards and snakes, but it came from a giant creature related to these animals. No known dinosaurs or flying reptiles from that time and place were big enough to lay such a huge egg, so it must have been a mosasaur after all. But we can't be 100% sure. Scientists did a lot of work and studied 259 types of living reptiles, like lizards and snakes, and their eggs. From this, they figured out that the mommy who laid the egg was probably at least 23 feet long, not counting her tail. During the late Cretaceous period, this part of Antarctica might have been like a nursery. Paleontologists have found bones of tiny mosasaurs and plesiosaurs in the same area, along with bones from the grown-up ones. Archaeologists in Norway made another cool but literally discovery and found dozens of arrows that had been hidden in ice for 6,000 years. They were melting out of a large ice patch in the high mountains, covering an area of about 45 football fields. In 2014 and 2016, when the summers were extra warm, scientists went to an ice patch called Langfoni to look around. They also found lots of reindeer bones and antlers there. Some of the arrows were whole and some in pieces, along with 5 arrowheads around the melting ice patch. This is more arrows than have been found at any other frozen site in the world. Some of the 68 found arrows date back to the Neolithic period, and the newest ones are from the 14th century of the Common Era. Ice is like the perfect time machine that can preserve whatever ends up there in an almost perfect condition. Langfoni became famous as one of the first ice patch sites after a local hiker found a 3,300-year-old leather shoe right next to its edge. Scientists are studying places like this to understand how people use these sites and how the ice patches from Norway to North America changed over time. Now, once upon a time, around 32,000 years ago, to be exact, a squirrel buried some seeds near a river in Siberia. Am I the only one getting the Ice Age vibes? Anyway, these seeds belong to a plant with cute white flowers. Thousands of years later, a group of scientists found these seeds buried deep in the frozen ground, about as far down as a 12-story building is tall. The seeds were surrounded by ice and bones of animals, like mammoths, bison, and woolly rhinoceroses. The mature seeds had been damaged, maybe by some squirrel, but some of the younger seeds still had good plant parts inside them. The scientists carefully took those out and put them in small containers to help them grow. And here comes the coolest part. They were able to grow the plants. Their flowers were shaped a little differently from the flowers of the same plant that grows today. After a year, the Ice Age plant even made new seeds. Based on this, the scientists suggested that permafrost could be a depository for an ancient gene pool, and we could find extinct species there and bring them back to life. Scientists on an icebreaker in Antarctica were looking for whales but found something way more unusual. The camera behind the ship, which is as heavy as a car, detected 16 million ice fish nests on the floor of the Weddell Sea. The nests were located about every 10 inches in all directions and covered an area of 93 square miles, which is slightly bigger than the whole of Washington, D.C. The colony even had a distinct border, which was a line in the sand. The scientists were in the area because they were studying a special spot in the ocean where the water was a little warmer than the water around it. In this warmer water, they found tiny animals called zooplankton near the top. When the young ice fish hatch, they swim up to this area to eat the zooplankton before going back down to the seafloor to grow up and have their own offspring. Since there was so much food, it made sense to see ice fish in this warm water. But they didn't expect to find such a huge number of ice fish nests, much more than anyone had ever seen before. New Zealand's Antarctic Heritage Fund found some old photo negatives in a hut in Antarctica. They turned out to be unique images from the Ross Sea Party. It was a famous failed expedition led by Ernest Shackleton. He wanted to become the first person to cross Antarctica by land, from the Weddell Sea to the Ross Sea, passing through the South Pole. But things went wrong when their ship, the Aurora, was blown out to sea. They had to use the hut from another explorer, Captain Robert Falcon Scott. His goal was to be the first person to reach the North Pole, but sadly, he didn't succeed either. The negatives were made of cellulose nitrate and were found stuck together in the small box. The Trust took the negatives back to New Zealand, where they carefully separated them and discovered 22 hidden images. Many of the photos were damaged, but the Trust could still recognize some familiar places around McMurdo Sound, a well-known area in Antarctica. No one knows for sure who took the pictures. In December 2021, some scientists noticed a strange mark on the Larsen Ice Shelf, a giant sheet of ice off the eastern coast of Antarctica. They thought it might be a river flowing under the ice, so they drilled down over 1,600 feet to check it out. They expected to find water, but they didn't expect to see that the water was full of fast-moving creatures called amphipods. The scientists also found that the water in the underground river had unusual layers of currents moving in different directions, which they still don't fully understand. Another surprising thing happened during their research. On December 20th of the same year, a volcano erupted far away in Tonga, and the pressure waves from the eruption were detected all the way down in the ice river in Antarctica. It shows how everything on our planet is connected, even in the most distant places. Consider Lake Enigma. What a fitting name! It's already strange enough because it's not even supposed to exist. But now, we stumbled upon actual life deep beneath it. And this just might help NASA in their search for life in outer space. The lake lies deep in the icy heart of Antarctica, so it's not really a water pool like we're used to, more like a lake-like block of ice, or so we thought. Just recently, Italian scientists discovered a secret that had been buried for ages, an actual body of water, and in this water, life is thriving. Various microorganisms, and even some weird little hunters. Which is super weird, since Enigma sits in a remote and harsh corner of our planet, the northern Victoria Land in Antarctica. The entire South Pole is cold, but in this place, temperatures can plummet to a horrifying minus 41 degrees Fahrenheit, though on average it's around 7. Chilly. Like we said, this lake shouldn't even be there at all. Antarctica is technically the largest desert on Earth, even though it's covered in snow, because it's super dry. There are zero rains, truly little snowfall, and the sun barely evaporates anything. And even if there is some water, the insane winds make sure to dry everything out super quickly. Putting on our thinking caps, this lake should lose an unimaginable 7 million cubic feet of water every year. Yet, the water remains. Why? No one knows. Scientists say there could be something deep underground that refills it constantly. They just have no idea what that might be. Maybe deep underground rivers, melting ice, or something else entirely. But hence the name, the Enigma Lake. The block of ice we mentioned is permanent and super thick, at least 36 feet of it, and that's higher than a 3-story building. So researchers decided to check out if there's anything beneath it. They used a so-called ground-penetrating radar, a super smart echo detector for the ground. This radar sends invisible radio waves into the earth. When they hit something underground, like rocks, water, or anything else, they bounce back to the device. By measuring how long it takes for the signal to return and how strong they are, we can determine the distance and what exactly the radar hit. That's how animals like bats, whales, and dolphins can see underwater. And we humans stole this cool nature idea to research buried structures and hidden caves. Scientists used this device all over the Enigma surface. This way, they were able to create an entire map of this under-ice world beneath. The water itself wasn't surprising. It's the unique ecosystem in it that shocked them. Unfortunately, no secret monsters or extraterrestrial secrets this time. But there are microorganisms there that may not exist anywhere else on Earth. Somehow, these creatures have managed to survive in complete isolation and extreme cold. It's not that we don't know these microorganisms, we've met them before, just not exactly like this. There are a couple groups hanging out down there. The first one is Bacteroidota. They love breaking down complex molecules, especially in your stomach, and help digest tough plant fibers. They mostly hang out inside us, but in the outside world, we might occasionally find them in soils and oceans. Then Actinobacteriota, genius chemists among bacteria. They decompose organic materials and help the soil get healthier. They're also famous for producing antibiotics, so we owe a lot of our medicine to them. The third one is Pseudomonadota. These guys weren't a surprise. They're crazy adaptable. They can thrive pretty much anywhere, from soil to water to the human body. Some of them are good, helping plants grow and in nutrient cycles, but others can be opportunistic pathogens. Ooh, bad guys. But what is actually a surprise is that Lake Enigma has tons of passibacteria. They're ultra-small even for microorganisms and can barely do anything themselves. So they prefer to live in symbiosis or be little parasites, relying on their hosts for nutrients and other necessities. All these little chompers might be ancient. They could be remnants of a time before the lake froze over completely, which is hundreds of thousands of years ago. It's simply weird to encounter these bacteria in the Enigma Lake, especially the little parasites. Passibacteria usually love low-oxygen environments, but this lake is very oxygen-rich, not even mentioning an almost 40 feet of ice above. So all this means that even though we know who these guys are, this specific species might be new to us. They could have evolved with some unique adaptations and abilities using the lake's unusual chemistry. They probably rely on a super simple and delicate food web. Some of the microorganisms produce energy from light, well, whatever light gets down there, or the lake's chemicals. The symbiosis guys most likely survive by living on or inside their neighbors. Yep, these microscopic creatures hunt each other. Nope, things can't be peaceful even in a place like that. If we find out what their secret to survival is, we might learn more about chemistry, medicine, and even extraterrestrial life. Because if life can endure such extreme conditions, then it can probably appear pretty much anywhere, including our closest neighbors, Europa or Enceladus, the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. They definitely hide oceans beneath their frozen surfaces, and now there's a very high chance there might be some life there. Antarctica must be the closest thing we have to extraterrestrial exploration before we actually land on other planets. It's full of hidden mysteries and surprising creatures. Even outside of Lake Enigma, the South Pole harbors life. Just take the McMurdo Dry Valleys, which are often referred to as Earthly Mars. These are among the most mysterious and extreme places on our planet. They're stretching across Victoria Land in Antarctica, and this is one of the driest places on Earth. Makes sense if you remember the name. Surprisingly, unlike other parts of the South Pole, this land is almost entirely devoid of snow and ice, just lots of super cold ground. There might even be some sand dunes nestled here and there between the rugged mountains. The ground is mostly covered in loose gravel, scattered with ancient rocks made of granite, and something interesting called gneiss, just spelled differently. It's the type of rock that's been through a lot, literally. It's usually born when granite and sedimentary rocks have to endure insane pressure or horrifying heat for a while, a process called metamorphism. These conditions are so intense that they literally rearrange the minerals into layers. That's why gneiss has such beautiful foliated looks. It's the planet's version of baking a layered cake. It's amazing because this place is almost exactly the way it was millions of years ago. These valleys are frozen in time, and they give us a little glimpse into Earth's distant past. And that includes life. Once again, local winds are absolutely terrifying gusts of cold air racing downhill, and they evaporate snow faster than it can even melt. So, logically, you shouldn't find much water here, not even mentioning life. But somehow, you can still stumble across frozen lakes and saline ponds in the dry valleys. And local life stretches all reason and our understanding of biology. It exists inside the rocks themselves. Microorganisms are hidden in slightly moist cracks and crevices. Deep inside, there's endolithic bacteria. These guys are super chill. Instead of moving around like other microorganisms, they always stay put inside their little rocky homes. How do they survive? Through photosynthesis. Just like plants, they take teeny tiny parts of light that gets in crevices and acts like little solar panels, getting energy from the sun. Meanwhile, in another place, beneath the Taylor Glacier, there's bacteria that literally doesn't eat anything. Not comfort, not sunlight, not even oxygen. These guys rely on a diet of dusty rocks and sulfur to fuel their weird metabolisms. By breaking down sulfur and iron, they get energy to sustain themselves. This way, they easily survive in deep seas at sub-freezing temperatures, completely cut off from sunlight, oxygen, and the world itself. This place is fascinating for both its life and the lack of it. In some parts of the valleys, like University Valley, yes, that's what it's called, the permafrost is so harsh that no microbes were found at all. This might be one of the only places on Earth where life appears to be completely absent, a quite scary idea. Anyway, now scientists are thinking about learning more about Lake Enigma and drilling this Mars-like environment, exactly for that reason, to see how we could get samples from Mars in the future.
Look at those lush coniferous forests and tundra. What a wonderland. You may have mistakenly thought it's Canada, but it's not. It's Antarctica, about 34 million years ago. So what makes Antarctica this frigid today? It turns out a mix of dropping carbon dioxide levels and some tectonic shuffle played a huge role in transforming this ice-free paradise into the frozen continent we know now. About 50 million years ago, CO2 concentrations were sky high, strutting around at around 1,000 to 2,000 parts per million. But as those levels tumbled down, global temps started to drop, paving the way for the mighty ice sheets that later took over Antarctica. While the CO2 dive was happening, tectonic activity was also working its magic. The big split between South America and Antarctica opened up the Drake Passage, which created the Antarctic Circumpolar Current. This powerful current acted like a bouncer, keeping warm air and ocean currents from crashing the Antarctic party, and helping keep things rather frosty. If you mix up Australia and Antarctica, you're not that wrong. These two continents used to be one. If you mix up Austria and Australia, it's much worse. By the way, don't fall for the internet myths and memes. There's no help desk in Austria specifically for people who intended to fly to Australia. Now, look at this magnificent Australian pink beach. It's precious, and not in a figurative sense. Those mysterious pinkish sands are actually garnet, and it's widely used in jewelry. Geologists studied those sands and came to the conclusion that the garnet contained there is older than local mountains. That doesn't make sense, right? In fact, it does. You see, Australia didn't used to be this very detached continent as it is now. Many, many millions of years ago, Australia and Antarctica were part of the supercontinent Gondwana, and glacial erosion released the garnet, which eventually made its way to the beach. These sands formed when South Australia was flat and chill, long before the mountains appeared. Most garnet gets washed away, but this batch has a rich history, tracing back to glacial rocks in the Transantarctic Mountains. So this pink sand comes from an ancient mountain range hidden under Antarctic ice. Not only does Antarctica ice hide gems like garnet, if you look harder, you might find entire buildings. Sounds insane, but this is exactly what a British explorer did. His name is Chris Brown, and he uncovered an entire building beneath the ice. He was traveling to the pole of inaccessibility, and it all started with a bummer. Chris and his son had their plane broken. Suddenly, they spotted a lone bust peeking out of the snow. This place was an old meteorological station. Despite freezing conditions, Chris and his son Micah had a blast exploring. Chris is on a mission to conquer all 7 earthbound poles of inaccessibility and has tackled 5 so far. I guess you already know that Antarctica is the largest desert on Earth, much larger than the Sahara or the Gobi. Still, despite being the driest continent on Earth, it boasts a seriously weird waterfall. Nestled in the mesmerizing McMurdo Dry Valleys, it's 5 stories tall and looks like it's gushing blood. It's even called Blood Falls. It may look outlandish and even frightening, but its nature can be easily explained. The water that creates this crimson cascade was once a salty lake, but over time, it became sealed off from the outside world when glaciers formed on top of it. Now, this ancient water hanging out 1,300 feet below the surface has cranked up its salt levels to 3 times saltier than the ocean. This salt water is also loaded with iron and gets 0 oxygen or sunlight. When the iron-rich water trickles through a crack in the glacier and meets the air, it rusts up, turning dark red. You may have mistakenly heard that no bug species belongs to Antarctica, but it's not exactly true, because there's this tiny Antarctic midge living there. Plus, there are some spiders too. Those aren't your average spiders hanging out in the darkest corners of your apartment. Those are critters lurking in the chilly darkness of the Antarctic ocean floor. These little marine creepers are actually arthropods and can stretch around 20 inches across. As if that wasn't bizarre enough, they also breathe through little holes in their legs. Quick question. What's the color that you associate most with Antarctica? I'm sure it's white. That's my association too. However, Antarctica may look like a slice of watermelon. That colorful snow comes courtesy of a tough little algae called Chlamydomonas nivalis. When things start to warm up during the Antarctic summer, these little guys release their vibrant red and green spores, painting the snow in wild and funky colors. But it's best to steer clear because that snow is not just a pretty sight. It's also toxic and definitely not edible. Searching for fossils is always a blast, but when you're in one of the most remote spots on the planet, it gets even more exciting. A diverse team of scientists recently hit the mother lode, pulling in over a ton of fossils from ancient marine life, dinosaurs, and birds from the late Cretaceous period, about 71 million years ago. Their adventure kicked off with a flight to South America, followed by a 5-day trek through the infamous Drake Passage. Upon reaching Antarctica, they set up camp using helicopters and inflatable boats. You might be thinking, why dig in Antarctica with all that ice? Well, it turns out there are places where rocks pop up, depending on the season. The team went to James Ross Island, located in the Antarctic Peninsula, and they went there during February and March. And that's one of the few parts of Antarctica where in summer, rocks are exposed, and those rocks can come from the age of dinosaurs. The expedition was a success, as they discovered over a ton of remarkable finds. Next up, the fossils will head to Chile before making their way to Pittsburgh's Carnegie Museum of Natural History. Among their discoveries, they found relics dating back about 71 million years, alongside some around 67 million years old, including plenty of snails, clams, and various marine creatures. Yikes! Look at this creepy sea worm. It could live in LA and be a star in a horror movie, but it chooses to call the chilly waters of the Southern Ocean near Antarctica its home. These worms can grow up to 8 inches long and 4 inches wide, but don't let their spooky exterior trick you. Research suggests they might actually be superheroes in disguise, playing a vital role in keeping ecosystems buzzing. Now, see that head? It's not really a head, it's just a retractable throat that helps this toothy creature chow down on its meals. Antarctica has many creepy critters to offer. Let me introduce you to the Antarctic strawberry feather star. It's not like Patrick from SpongeBob, though. It's more like a deep-sea creature straight out of a horror movie. Picture this: 20 wiggly arms, some stretching up to 8 inches, all decked out with these bizarre little bumps. Yikes indeed. Back in 2014, scientists buried 34 seismic monitors in the snow on the Ross Ice Shelf, which is huge. Think of it as an ice slab the size of Texas, just chilling over the Southern Ocean. These clever little machines picked up a nearly non-stop buzzing. Even though our human ears usually can't catch these low-frequency sounds, scientists have worked their magic and made them audible for us. They even shared the creepy audio online. A glaciologist from the University of Chicago says that if you could hear this vibration, it'd sound like a swarm of cicadas taking over the backyard in late summer. But these glacier explorers weren't trying to capture spooky tunes. They're actually on a mission to monitor the Ross Ice Shelf because things are heating up, literally, and the ice is melting faster than ice cream on a hot day. Ice shelves are like Earth's safety plugs, keeping all that massive ice from surging into the ocean. So what exactly is making all that noise? It's likely just strong winds whipping across ice dunes, creating a kind of natural vibration. For years, we've thought the megalodon was just a big shark, which is scary enough. After all, it could have eaten a creature the size of a whale in just 5 bites. Estimates indicate that the largest shark that ever lived had been around 59 feet long, which is a reasonable size and explains a lot. But the scientific community was wrong. Very wrong. Now, scientists have proven that megalodons could grow up to 80 feet long, which is the same as a 6-story building. The creature would have certainly been dozens of times bigger than you if you had seen it underwater. These giants ruled the ancient oceans between about 20 million and 3 million years ago. And even though it was a long time ago, they've left a lasting impression, becoming the protagonists of many movies. And scientists continue to search for answers about their life. Thanks to this, we still occasionally find their fossils. But the thing is, no one has ever found a complete skeleton. All we have are scattered vertebrae, a few scales, and, of course, those massive, razor-sharp teeth. The most complete piece we know of is a 36-foot section of a megalodon's spine. It was once part of the trunk of the animal's body. So, to assess just how big the megalodon was, experts compared its fossils to more than 150 species of sharks, both those that are alive and those that have gone extinct, to get the most realistic result possible. If the megalodon had had the proportions of a regular shark, it would have had a 6-foot head and a 12-foot tail. It would have also stretched 54 feet from nose to fin. But these measurements are way off the mark. The largest megalodon vertebra ever found is 9 inches in diameter, which makes it 3 inches larger than the largest vertebra of a typical shark. And if we follow these proportions, that megalodon was a whopping 80 feet long. To better understand how giant this is, just think of 2 school buses lined up end to end. For a long time, It was very common to think that the megalodon was just a giant great white shark. And it makes sense, right? I mean, both would have had large, terrifying, serrated teeth. But that was another completely wrong idea. Now, we know that megalodons were actually much more slender and aerodynamic than the modern great white shark. Their body shape was built to cut through the water with much less resistance, minimizing the effects of gravity in the sea, letting them glide effortlessly through the ocean. Now, if Megalodon wasn't just another great white shark, what other animal of the same species was it most similar to? Surprise! In fact, it had more in common with the modern lemon shark. This species has robust and powerful bodies, 2 large dorsal fins, and blunt snouts, which makes them really fast and agile hunters, like prehistoric predators. In other words, while thinking about the megalodon, you can imagine a giant, turbocharged lemon shark. This is the most modern comparison of the megalodon with another animal, unless scientists find a complete skeleton of the ancient shark. But it's not common to find complete shark skeletons. They're rare because they're actually made not of bone but of soft, coated cartilage, like the stuff in human noses and ears. Their teeth are the boniest part of their bodies, and it's the reason why we've found so many of them. Yet, a complete skeleton is like scattered puzzle pieces to us. There's no solid bone to hold these pieces together, so the whole thing is very vulnerable to falling apart. Still, it's actually possible for an entire shark skeleton to survive. In these cases, very specific natural phenomena have to come into play. The skeleton needs to get buried super fast in mud or sediment, free of any kind of scavengers and away from ocean currents. Otherwise, it simply disintegrates before it can fossilize. Interestingly, although the sea is the home of these animals, it is possible to find their skeletons on land too. Millions of years ago, a big portion of today's dry land was submerged, teeming with marine life. Then, in certain places, sedimentary minerals and specific biological conditions of the seabed allowed the fossilization of sharks in marine rocks. Today, those are desert rocks that ensure the preservation of shark fossils. But in any case, searching for a shark tooth in a desert is like looking for a needle in a haystack. But finding an entire fossilized skeleton embedded in a rock is like hitting the jackpot. Another unexpected discovery is that these prehistoric sharks were not born small and cute like regular baby sharks. A newborn megalodon could reach almost 13 feet in length. That's more than twice the height of the average human. Imagine a shark the size of a boat from the moment it's born. Now, although we don't have all the information about the giant of the seas, it's a fact that it's one of the most famous animals in pop culture worldwide. Not only has it inspired several movies, but some people also insist that the megalodon is still alive. Scientists say it's not. The megalodon didn't survive the test of time, and it would be impossible for such a giant creature to dwell in the seas without us noticing it. First, it was a super predator. It hunted whales, dolphins, and other large marine animals. If the Meg was still around, its presence would completely change the balance in the oceans. It would have huge impacts on marine ecosystems, regulating populations and influencing the size and behavior of the ancient shark's prey. A good example is whales. They wouldn't have grown so big if the Meg still hunted in the oceans. This only happened because there was no super predator in the way. If the giant shark was still in our oceans, species like the blue whale would be tiny, as they would need to develop and adapt to be able to escape constant attacks. The lives of the workers of the sea would also be completely different. Fishers would have to avoid certain areas, ships would change routes, and even maritime tourism would be risky. Going for a swim and coming across a shark over 65 feet long? not worth the risk. Plus, if the megalodon was still out there, we would have some proof. Commercial fishing catches millions of sharks every year, and a monster of this size would not go unnoticed. Not to mention that with all of today's technology such as drones, satellites, and submarines at our disposal, someone would have already recorded an encounter with this living legend. By the way, most sharks, like most fish, are cold-blooded. But the reality for Megalodon was different. This giant was able to keep its body warmer than the surrounding ocean. This gave it an advantage over other sea creatures, allowing it to remain fast and active even in colder waters. It was a survival advantage that other animals of its kind did not acquire during their evolution. One of the most famous theories is that the Meg lives in the Mariana Trench, but scientists are sure that it doesn't make any sense. This region is poor in food and has many tiny creatures, which would not be nearly enough to sustain a large predator. In addition, there's a lot of research studying countless sharks that live in the ocean depths, and none of them come close to the size of the Megalodon. So, does the Megalodon still exist? Definitely not, but that doesn't mean it isn't any less mysterious and fascinating. The giant shark that terrorized the oceans some 20 million years ago. For 13 million years, this 60-ton beast dominated the warm waters of our planet. Though, some believe that the Meg still lives in the most remote and deepest parts of the ocean. It's a hot summer day. It seems only logical to go for a swim in the sea. You're floating on your back, completely relaxed. Your eyes are closed. Your breath is even. Water's pleasantly cool around your body. A light breeze touches your face. You feel calm enough to doze off. Suddenly, something bumps into your leg. Yanked out of your half-slumber, you begin to flail until you're face to face with the invisible danger. Luckily, all you spot is a couple of easily recognizable fins and cute smiley snouts. Phew, just dolphins. Guess you're lucky to meet them in the wild. These amazing creatures are so close, you can touch them. You've heard people say dolphins' skin feels rubbery, but to your mind, it's more like the inner part of a hard-boiled egg. One of the animals is so close to you that its salty smell fills your nostrils. You know, though, that dolphins don't have sweat glands. It means they don't sweat and are pretty much odorless. The smell you sense comes from the water they swim in. The largest and most ferocious predator to ever haunt the oceans, the Megalodon shark dominated the seas for centuries before coming extinct millions of years ago. However, scientists managed to discover very few remnants of the giant shark. Everything we know about the great beast we've learned thanks to fossils of its giant teeth, which are just about the size of the average human hand. A megalodon skeleton has never been discovered. Shark skeletons are made mostly of cartilage, meaning that they decompose quickly. Luckily, sharks continuously shed and regrow teeth throughout their lives. One shark can go through 40,000 teeth in a single lifetime. Scientists have managed to study different types of shark species based on their teeth alone. The megalodon shark had around 276 teeth. When they fell out, those teeth landed in the seabed where they stayed for millions of years, fossilizing. Scientists found those teeth, and they're the only real record we have of the megalodon's existence. Megalodon teeth have been discovered all over the world. It means that unlike other marine animals of its time, the megalodon was intercontinental. Even today, most sharks and marine animals tend to stick to one sea or ocean. The megalodon shark swam freely around the world, moving between tropical and subtropical waters. Megalodon teeth have been found in every continent apart from the freezing cold waters of Antarctica. When a megalodon makes a starring appearance in a movie or TV show, it's portrayed to look like a giant version of a great white shark. Scientists previously believed that the megalodon and the great white shark both descended from one common ancestor. Still, it's not true. In fact, it's more likely that the megalodon was the arch-enemy of the great white shark's ancestor, the broad-toothed mako shark. That means Megalodon wouldn't have looked so similar to the great white after all. In reality, the Megalodon would have a shorter nose than the great white, along with longer pectoral fins to give the giant shark a stockier and more threatening build. They both had an excellent sense of smell though, so even in prehistoric times, it wasn't a good idea to go swimming with a chunk of raw meat in hand. And it certainly isn't safe now. Whether the Meg's hiding somewhere in the depths, which some still believe is true, or it's gone forever, younger cousins will still be there waiting. Also, both of them like to go after big marine mammals, so they would certainly have things to do together. That is, until the Meg got moody and accidentally ate its friend. You never know. These guys had a different hunting style. Great whites prefer to dive straight towards their prey and find its softest spot, like exposed legs or underbelly. Sometimes, an entire tooth would be found embedded in a bone of some bigger animal, such as a whale. Without the main parts they use for swimming, poor sea animals were then helpless and unable to escape. Yet whales were just a smaller part of megalodon's diet. Seals, sea cows, squids, dolphins, other sharks. The good old Meg probably wouldn't say no to some random school of smaller fish swimming into its mouth either. Nothing better than a good snack after a big tasty dinner. Even those giant turtles weren't safe with their thick shells. The Meg probably took them as a dare challenge on a daily basis. Scientists have used computer simulations to try and work out the hunting style of the ancient shark. Using this technology, scientists have discovered that the megalodon's attack style was very different from that of modern-day sharks. Modern sharks dive straight for their prey's most vulnerable spot, for example, the soft underbelly of a seal. The megalodon's teeth were uniquely suited to biting through tougher areas of cartilage. So, evidence suggests that a megalodon would first chew the tougher fins of their prey, rendering them unable to swim away before launching into their final attack. Some people believe that the megalodon is still alive today, lurking at the depths of the ocean's waters. But it's unlikely to be true. Megalodons are a warm water species, which means they would be unable to survive in the cold waters of the deep ocean. Most of the megalodon's potential prey live in shallower waters, meaning there would be very little for the megalodon to eat at deep sea level. Simply put, if there was an animal as big as the megalodon still living today, we would have spotted it by now. It is unlikely that you'll run into a Meg though. The sharks, like us, preferred warm coastal waters. Deep ocean living would be too cold for the beasts, and food would be scarce. Their entire bodies would also have to evolve to avoid being squished by the enormous water pressure down there. It's unlikely they're still around, but not impossible. Some good news if you do run into one is that the shark is pretty unlikely to eat you. You are way too small a meal for the megalodon, even if you have a couple of friends with you. This guy eats whales that are over 50 feet long. If you're having a beach party though, it's a different story. In a beach full of swimmers, the shark very well might creep up, scooping several humans into its giant mouth without even chewing. The fearsome name megalodon comes from two Greek words, megas, meaning big, and odont, meaning tooth. Combined, they mean big tooth, and it certainly lives up to its name. Just one of its chompers is the same size as a human head. It had 276 humongous teeth in total, across 5 terrifying rows. In all of history, only a couple of saber-toothed cats and the T-Rex had consistently bigger teeth. Now that's a showdown I'd like to watch. The megalodon vanished millions of years ago, leaving only huge teeth to be found by modern archaeologists. They literally disappeared with very few traces left. Scientists believe that over time, deep sea levels dropped and the ocean's temperature went down rapidly. Over a third of all marine life was wiped out as the oceans cooled and the number of animals at the bottom of the food chain plummeted. This had a catastrophic effect on the hungry predators at the top. Sorry guys. It became way too cold for these sun-loving sharks too, which made it difficult for them to reproduce since they gave birth in warm waters. The megalodon is usually described as a sort of great white shark, but this is just a common myth. In fact, the ancestors of today's great white existed at the same time as the Meg, but they weren't best buddies and were even in competition with each other. The great white shark was a better hunter using its smaller size and agility to snap up the Meg's prey quickly. They were also known to eat Meg pups, who were only half their size. This didn't exactly help the whole extinction thing. While a great white was no match for an adult Meg in a head-to-head fight, they sure weren't scared of stealing their food. This only left the bigger fish and whales for the Meg, but its food supplies began to run out as whales swam to the cooler new seas. The whales adapted to prefer the colder temperatures, leaving our friend the Meg behind. The megalodons either starved or were frozen into extinction by the Ice Age. Rather than a great white, the megalodon is more like a modern bull shark. It had a short snout, a flat lower jaw, and huge pectoral fins to support its massive weight and size. As scary as they are, these sharks were actually caring family guys. Several megalodon nursery areas have been discovered in Florida, Maryland, and Panama. They gave birth to their young in shallow water environments. We know this from discovering loads of tiny megalodon teeth found in these areas. I wonder if they had nannies too.
The water is bubbling under the fishing boat as if something is coming up out of the water. It gets closer and closer. The water seems to boil. Suddenly, you see giant jaws and glistening teeth. Seconds later, a huge shark jumps out of the water and crushes the boat in one bite. It was the megalodon, the largest fish that ever existed on Earth. Now, we pictured the megalodon as this, an enlarged version of the white shark for a long time. But scientists continue to argue about its appearance. So far, they agree that the image of this giant shark was wrong. Here's the data that scientists are sure of. Size, about 50 feet long. That's as big as a school bus and comparable to the length of a subway car. 8.5 times the height of an average person. Let's compare it to the modern white shark. The megalodon is 3 times bigger, but that's just a rough estimate. We don't have a fully preserved skeleton of the megalodon. That's because it didn't have any bones, but cartilage. Not much of that left in the 3.6 million years since the megalodons went extinct. All that survived were teeth and a few vertebrae. By comparison, dinosaurs went extinct about 66 million years ago. But their solid bones are perfectly preserved, and we have many different examples of their skeletons. Scientists have calculated the size of a megalodon based on its teeth and jaw. Now, this is one tooth. It's about 7 inches long, bigger than the palm of your hand, and 3 times the size of a modern white shark's teeth. The megalodon jaw was 6 feet wide and chalked up 5 rows of teeth, a total of 276 razor-sharp chompers. The other preserved remains are the vertebral column. It consists of 150 vertebrae, each 6 inches wide. They contain much calcium because, well, megalodon love fresh cold milk. Nah, it's because the vertebrae had to withstand the enormous mass of a giant shark. Based on those fossils, scientists created a model and calculated only the approximate size of the megalodon. But it could hardly have been any bigger. It's all about breathing. The bigger the fish, the more oxygen it needs, which means a larger gill area. That's the organ that filters the water and collects oxygen. If the megalodon were any larger, it would have trouble breathing. So, scientists believe that 50 feet is the maximum size of an individual. On average, they were a few feet smaller. Whew. Now, let's talk weight. On average, one megalodon weighed about 30 to 35 tons. By comparison, a white shark weighs 1 ton, which is 30 times less. Hey, trust me. A school bus is 4 times lighter at 7.5 tons. The weight of a megalodon can be compared to an empty Boeing 737. But the modern blue whale beats the megalodon in size and weight. 98 feet long versus 50, almost twice as long. Blue whale's weight is about 180 tons. That's like 6 megalodons or 6 passenger planes, or like 33 adult elephants. Hey, don't you love the comparisons? Now, about the appearance of the megalodon. Scientists believe it didn't look like a white shark. The megalodon belongs to a different fish family and most likely looked like a giant sand tiger shark. Flattened snout, small eyes. Its dorsal fin is moved backwards. The sand shark has 2 dorsal fins about the same size. The coloration is light brown with a white belly and may have had brown-red spots like a sand shark all over its body. We used to think of the megalodon as something scary from the first finds of its fossils. That was back in the Renaissance era. People found some teeth in the rocks. At first, these teeth were thought to be the tongues of dragons or snakes. And here's the first drawing of what the owner of these teeth supposedly looked like. A massive snout with a scary nose and a bunch of razor-sharp teeth. We also have the evidence that megalodons were brutal hunters, kings of the food chain. The first combat tool in their arsenal was the battering ram. The megalodon was a slow swimmer, though. it could only accelerate up to 11 miles per hour. In comparison, the modern white shark can reach 35 miles per hour in a dash for its meal. The fastest human swimmer could only go 6 miles per hour. Well, good luck with that. But the megalodon had incredible mass. Though slow, its battering ram had tremendous power. The megalodon would take its prey by surprise. It had only one chance to hit it. If it missed, it would take too long for a second round. The maneuverability of the megalodon was comparable to a large truck. But if the ram was successful, the prey was stunned and couldn't move. At this point, the megalodon aimed at vulnerable spots, like the fins and tail of the prey. Scientists have found many ancient whale remains with megalodon tooth marks. It turned out that the giant shark knew where its prey's vital organs were located and could strike at them. When the prey was immobilized, the megalodon bared its teeth. An adult person could easily fit into its open jaw at full height, and according to various estimates, the bite force of the megalodon was almost 11 tons. Now imagine the weight of 3 SUVs concentrated at the tip of a sharp tooth. That's 9 times the power of the largest white shark bite, and 6 times the power of the modern record holder for biting, the saltwater crocodile. Here, look at a map of where the remains of the megalodon were found. South and North America, Europe, Asia, Australia. It was the master of all seas and was comfortable anywhere on our planet. We've even found some remains of the giant shark in freshwater sediments. Perhaps it wasn't afraid to enter rivers to hunt. Now, other scientists say that maybe the megalodon wasn't even a predator, all because of its size. It couldn't swim fast. It couldn't even make short dashes like the white shark. If prey tried to escape, the megalodon didn't rush into pursuit because it could never catch up with it. Another problem is the skeleton of the megalodon. The cartilage is weaker than the bones, so the musculature of the giant shark was not as massive and robust in the first place. The megalodon may even have been a scavenger and never got into fights. This is one of the reasons why ancient sharks became extinct. Megalodons like shallow, warm waters, with temperatures ranging from 53 degrees Fahrenheit. But over 3 million years ago, the climate turned colder. This deprived the megalodons of territories and plenty of food. The primitive whales that had been the main diet of the giant sharks began to disappear. Faster predators took the remnants of food. The megalodon started to starve. In evolution, a new player entered the field, the toothed whales, ancestors of the modern killer whales. They lived in packs and had bigger brains than the megalodon. So, over time, they started to compete with the megalodon. They took advantage of its clumsiness. A group of killer whales could easily win a competition against a giant shark. Many scientists believe this was the reason for the disappearance of the largest shark in the world. But there are theories that the megalodon is still alive and roaming the dark waters of our planet. Several Australian fishers have allegedly encountered a shark of incredible size, but no one can confirm these testimonies. Fans of this theory believe that giant sharks can hide in deep waters away from human eyes. In the Mariana Trench, for example, it's the deepest place on our planet. It's deeper than if you stuck Mount Everest in the water, and we've even found the teeth of a megalodon there. But science says that such a giant shark couldn't live in the Mariana Trench for many reasons. One, it's too cold. The megalodon was probably a cold-blooded fish, so it had to use the warmth of its environment to survive. But the water in the Mariana Trench is cold, about 40 degrees Fahrenheit. That's because the deeper down, the less sunlight gets in there. The second reason is pressure. Every 30 feet deep increases the pressure by 1 atmosphere. That is, at the depth of 100 feet, the water presses you 3 times harder than you would feel it at the surface. The weak muscles and cartilage of the megalodon wouldn't allow it to dive too deep into the Mariana Trench. And, most importantly, food. The farther from the ocean's surface, the fewer living organisms. Megalodons used to eat primitive whales, ranging from 10 to 20 feet. Small fish only inhabit the Mariana Trench. A megalodon would never be able to catch one. And, judging by its size, all the megalodon did was eat and then look for food again. Compare its weight to that of a human. The average human should get about 2,000 calories a day with an average weight of about 180 pounds. The megalodon weighed 470 times that and needed many more calories. So, even all the fish inhabiting the Mariana Trench could hardly feed a megalodon for even a few days. So, all these theories, of course, are not true. But still, it's just smart to be careful out there. Know what I mean?